But you and I know, we both know, anywhere that lockdowns have been relaxed, right? If you go back to the Spanish flu, or if you go back to Germany a few weeks ago, you will see a spike in the number of cases. It will happen. So given the unique circumstances in which Nigeria finds itself, where we are not only in the biggest public health emergency of generations, we are also in the biggest economic emergency of all time. The poor people in Nigeria who need to go out every day just to be able to feed their families, how are they going to last for 12 months for this thing to finish? They're going to starve. People are going to be eaten out of dustbins. And this is my question to the medical community. At a time like this, should we not be thinking about the emergency authorization of chloroquine as a preventive measure? Prophylactic use of chloroquine. Let me explain. If you look at the countries that have low death rates, right? If you look maybe at South Korea, you look at India, and then you look at the countries that have high death rates, the differences are staggering. So in the United States, for example, which is a high death rate country, we're looking at something approaching 200 deaths per million. And if you go to the other end of the scale, you're looking at maybe 5 deaths per million in South Korea, and I think something as low as 1 per million, in India. That is a staggering difference. From 200 deaths per million down to 1 death or 5 deaths per million. Come on, you got to take notice. And what is the difference? There's a different treatment protocol. In the countries where there is low death rate, what they're doing is they're giving chloroquine at a very early stage. So as soon as you're diagnosed positive, they start giving you chloroquine. In the countries with high death rate, they wait until you're already quite ill before they start prescribing chloroquine. Now, the probable reason for the difference in these death rates may very well lie in these different treatment protocols. And here's why. If you go and look at the study that actually looked into the relationship between chloroquine and coronavirus, what it showed was that chloroquine interferes with the ability of the virus to multiply.
This is the paper. Zinc inhibits coronavirus RNA polymerase activity in vitro, and zinc ionophores block the replication of these viruses in cell culture. As the zinc concentration inside the cell went up, you can see that the byproduct of the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase went down, 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 clearly demonstrating that zinc intracellularly is going to block this very important enzyme of the virus. Now enter coronavirus. Coronavirus has its own genome. It is made out of RNA, and that RNA just happens to have a 5' head and a poly A tail. So when it pops into the cytosol, it's going to be read by those same ribosomes that can't tell the difference. Except this time, instead of making a protein that's useful to your cell, this RNA that comes out of the virus is going to make something called a RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. And it's this enzyme right here that is going to read from the 3' end to the 5' end of the viral RNA and replicate it. So this RNA-dependent RNA polymerase makes more viral genomes. It's also known as replicase for that reason. And there's something that has been shown to inhibit this replicase, and that is zinc. Zinc will shut down RNA-dependent RNA polymerase or replicase. And so that is what we learned. The problem is, how do you get zinc inside the cell? The problem with zinc is that it's an ion. It's a 2+ ion. And ions cannot get through the cellular membrane unless there's a transporter that allows it to come in. What you need is some sort of ionophore or some sort of gated mechanism to open and to allow that zinc to come into the cell, increasing the concentration of zinc into the cell so it can block RDRP. Well, enter this paper that was pointed out by some of you commenting. Chloroquine is a zinc ionophore. What they show is that they were able to detect intracellular zinc by checking its fluorescence. Here on the x-axis, we have increasing concentrations of chloroquine, and the white bars represents those cells that were bathed in only 5 micromolar solution of zinc chloride, and the black was in 10 times that amount at 50 micromolars concentration of zinc chloride. And what you can see here is that in the normal situation, if you're able to get some zinc into the cells, this is the amount of zinc you will see inside the cells. So this is the amount of concentration outside the cell. This is the amount of zinc you see inside the cell. And let's just look at this same concentration, 5 micromolar. When you bathe the cells in chloroquine, you can see how much this intracellular zinc concentration goes up. In fact, if you look at the amount of zinc inside the cell, by just adding a small amount of chloroquine here at 10 micromolar, we would get more zinc inside the cell than if we increase the concentration of zinc outside the cell tenfold. That's how powerfully chloroquine will increase intracellular zinc concentration. Now remember, this is chloroquine. This is a medication that's been used by millions of people already with known side effects, and it's pretty well tolerated.
So given the evidence that we can see that exists, yes, it is not a clinical trial. Yes, these were in vitro studies, but they do appear to explain what we are seeing in practice, which is why early stage treatment when there's a low viral load works. And while late stage treatment, where there's a heavy viral load, doesn't work. I mean, the chloroquine can't kill the virus, it only stops replication. So that would explain why. Now, if we look at prophylaxis, the first time I'm exposed to the virus, I'm only going to have a small amount of it. So if there's some zinc inside my system, wouldn't that just help, stop the replication, and then my immune system can deal with the few viruses that are there, and that gives me, a much better chance of survival. We are not a high-income European country who don't have malaria, and their populations have never taken chloroquine or have hardly ever taken chloroquine. Our populations have taken chloroquine since maybe 1950, 1940, up till maybe the late 70s or something like that. And for that long period of time, millions upon millions of Nigerians have been taking chloroquine. How many have died? COVID-19 will kill 3 to 15% of everybody who gets it. Chloroquine does not kill 3 to 15% of people who got it. It will take it. And here's a really important point. If this thing works, our healthcare professionals will not die. This is important not just for themselves and for their families. It is important for us as a country. We have a ratio of 1 doctor to about 5,000 patients in Nigeria. If a doctor dies, how many years are you going to use to replace that doctor? Some people will argue to tell me that, that there are some studies that have shown that chloroquine is not very effective. Well, I will point out to you that none of those studies, not a single one of those studies, is a double-blind clinical trial. Not one. Not the one in Brazil, not the one in the US where they were treating people in their veteran hospitals or stuff like that. Not one. So, if you're going to say that we need clinical trial to know, whether this thing works or not, then if you are quoting those studies, you also have to be quoting what is happening in South Korea, their treatment protocol, or in India or any other country, because they are not double-blind studies either. So why are you quoting one and not the other? And I will tell you the second problem I have with those studies. All of those studies have been giving chloroquine to late-stage patients. They were not giving chloroquine to early-stage patients. How long do we even have to take this, even if you tell the population to take it? within 12 weeks max, we're going to have results from these clinical trials. Maybe 8-12 weeks we'll have results. But in 8-12 weeks, you can go from having 100 deaths to having 50,000 deaths. This is the nature of this disease. And at that time, your economy will be on its knees, right? What risk is there to tell the population to take this as a preventive measure for 8 to 12 weeks? What is the risk? If we don't take into account that we do not simply have a public health emergency, but that we are also trying to save lives by saving livelihoods. Simply keeping somebody from chloroquine or whatever you're thinking about, if the person doesn't have food to eat, they will die. Are we going to leave the poor people to die? Why can't we think about authorizing this as an emergency measure?